Today we're taking a look at one cheap guitar and one very cheap guitar. So one is a Squier Affinity Strat, that one's 200, and one's the Harley Benton Strat, which is $100. This one is 80 euros here in Europe, and this one is actually 200 euros, which would be slightly over $200. But let's not split hairs, shall we? So what I was wondering, because these are basically the same thing, how do they compare to each other? Well, there's only one way to find out. And towards the end, I'm also going to say what I think is the best option out there if you're looking for something in this price range. But we'll get towards that in the end. So, I'll get these hooked up and start playing. Okay, so first up, the Harley Benton. This one was the $100 version. I think they look pretty much similar. I'm using a Roland Cube Street because, hey, let's face it, you won't be playing one of these guitars with a Marshall Plexi most of the time, at least. If you're on the market for one of these, you probably won't have a high-end amp. Something like a Cube Street would be more down your alley. See what I did there? Street, alley. So this is what the Harley Benton sounds like. Add a bit of volume, it's quite quiet now. Let's try it with some gain. So this is the classic stack setting. Okay, so I'll just pick up the other guitar and play with that a bit, and then I'll tell you what I think of how they feel. Okay, so both guitars, I've had these for a while now, and when I picked them, or when I unboxed them the first time, I thought they felt quite nice. But here's the problem when you buy new budget stuff, or budget guitars, that is. Stuff can happen to it when it gets to settle a bit. So both the guitars, or necks on these guitars, have kind of had a life of their own while sitting around waiting to be played, as is often the case with budget gear. So they've bent one way and the other way. What that means is on the $200 guitar, the Squier, the neck is bent slightly like so, which means that the frets, there's a bit of string buzz. Nothing major yet, but it could get worse. And the opposite is true of this one, where the neck has bent so that it's bent this way. Which means that around here, it feels fine, but when you get to the 12th fret, there's a huge distance between the fretboard and the string, which makes playing really heavy and difficult. The other thing that both guitars have had happen to them is that the fret ends, which felt nice when I picked them out of the box, now don't feel so nice anymore. Now that can also happen to new instruments, especially cheap ones, and fret ends sticking out is probably one of the most annoying things you can have on a guitar, because it feels like you can actually cut yourself if it's bad enough. Same things happen to the Squier, so there's not really a whole lot of difference in that sense between these two. Now, there is a slight difference, I think, in terms of quality. The Squier feels a bit better. Is it double the amount of money better? No, it's not. I don't know what the fretboard materials are, but this feels really weird when it rubs against this. It feels like it's catching the string, or kind of adding friction from the fretboard even more than normal. Whereas this one, the Squier, feels just fine. Let's do one more test and see how they stay in tune when you use the whammy bar. I'm not holding my breath. Let's start with the Squier, just simply because I have it hooked up already. So here it is, kind of in tune. So far, so good. Still. No more? Yeah, but that's to be expected with a guitar of this price range. You can do some stuff about that as well, unless it's not the actual whammy bar. It might be the strings sticking here. I have a few tuning hacks, which I'll put a link to somewhere around here, so you can check that video out, how to make your guitar stay in tune better. Let's try the other one. Okay, so in tune. Like I suspected, neither guitar stays in tune when you use the whammy bar, but that's kind of given, or at least I take it for granted when I play an entry-level instrument. Now, one of the features that I did notice about this guitar, and I'll put a photo here, is that when I unscrewed the back plate from both, which I always do, it has these springs going to a little plate here, which is mounted to the body of the guitar. On the $100 Harley Benton, they'd actually had to drill a new hole here, so it has 3 holes where it should have 2. Because they messed something up, they couldn't be bothered to do it properly straight away. It's $100 now, we'll just put another hole in. So the whole plate here is totally like... So quality not top notch on this one at least, and definitely not on the other one as well. Which one would I get? Here's the deal, I wouldn't get either one. Why is that? Well, mostly for the reasons that I've kind of outlined already, because the wood can have a life of its own for a while when it's a new instrument. Even on the slightly more expensive ones it can, but especially on the budget ones. I'd get a second-hand guitar. How do you get a second-hand guitar? Well, you might go to a pawn shop and get one. You might know someone who has one. There are dedicated websites, national websites in different countries for that kind of stuff. And then there's eBay. How do you know if you can trust the person you're buying from? Well, you have to check the person's feedback first of all. Best of all is if you can return the guitar if you're not happy with it. That's not always the case, but do check if returns are possible. The thing about second-hand guitars is that they've already had their life of their own and they should be settled. So that's why I would get a second-hand guitar, and also because they drop in price, especially budget gear drops in price when you buy it second-hand or sell it second-hand, and that means you can probably get a better quality instrument for the same price as, let's say for instance this one. So you spend $100 on a new instrument, you could get a slightly better one for second-hand for the same amount of money. That's why I would go for second-hand basically all the time. The place where I work at, I work as a music teacher in elementary school. We have really banged up old Squier Strat, which feels so much better than either one of those. And if I were to sell that, if it was my guitar and I were to sell that, I probably wouldn't get more than $100 for it, because it looks the way it looks, but it feels really good. And that's the most important thing when buying a guitar. Feel. Everything else is basically secondary to that, because you can always upgrade the parts. Feel is what it is. So definitely I would go for something that's second-hand. Now, it might sound as if I'm bashing these two guitars. There's the second one. Actually, no, I'm not. Back when I was starting, entry-level guitars were worse than this. They were horrible. These aren't exactly horrible, but they're not great either. That being said, these are also individuals.
You're all individuals! Yes, we're all individuals! You're all different! Yes, we are all different! I'm not.
So you might get 10 of these Squiers, try them, and 8 might be poor, 2 might be good. Same for these Harley Bentons. So you never know until you try one. So I do recommend that you try one, especially if you have a local instrument store, that you go and actually try the guitars there. If you order them online, see to it that you can return the instrument if you don't like it. It's a bit more of a bother that way. So support your local music or instrument store by actually buying your gear from there. Yeah, that's basically it. I mean, they're cheaply built. You can upgrade the electronics, but they don't feel too great. And if you have to start adjusting the necks on or the neck on a new guitar, especially if you're a beginner, you're using something like this or in this price range, you probably are a beginner. You don't want to be adjusting necks. You want to be, or setting up your guitars at all. You want to be basically playing as much as you can, and everything else is a distraction, like setting up a neck, seeing that it's properly set up. It's not that difficult, but it's still a bother, and you should be kind of aiming to become a better player instead of a luthier. So that's my 2 cents. I think yeah, you can certainly buy one of these instruments, and I do know that people are on a budget. Personally, I would add a bit more money to the equation and get something slightly better. If you're really on a budget, look at second-hand stuff. And even if you add a bit of money, still look at second-hand stuff, because that stuff can be really good. You can get stuff very cheaply online, especially on eBay. So I wouldn't buy a new guitar actually, unless it's top of the line stuff. I'd get second-hand, because that's usually better. I've actually reviewed this Harley Benton previously. There should be a card here somewhere. If you want to check out more of my gear reviews, there is an end screen right around here somewhere, right about now. I hope you liked the video. Click like, subscribe if you haven't, comment, let me know, all that kind of stuff, and support me on Patreon, because I buy the gear that I review. So you get an honest review, buy second hand. That's all I have for you. Hope to see you in another one. Bye!